And welcome to Right Time Radio. Tom, take it.
It's the right time for Right Time Radio. This is Tom Bruno.
And I'm Lynn Donovan.
And we have some special guests today. You want to introduce them?
I sure do. Today on Right Time Radio, we have the authors of a new book, Cowboy the F Up, How to Be a Real Man in Today's World. It's written by Don Bendel and Janet Bendel. And we're going to read their bios to you here first, and then Don's going to read an excerpt, and then we'll come back and have Janet read part of it. So it's a very interesting book, split up in a couple different ways.
So Janet Bendel grew up in the upstate New York and earned her doctorate from the University of Massachusetts. She also lived and traveled about Europe. A Vietnam vet and former Army captain, Dr. Bendel owns a nonprofit anger and stress management institute of Colorado Springs and is an expert on PTSD and other social psychology issues.
Also a former Army captain and a Green Beret, Don Bendel is a 100% disabled Vietnam combat veteran. He is a 3-time #1 best-selling author on Amazon and has over 3 million copies of his 29 books in print worldwide. Wouldn't we like to be that at that point, Lynn? He is also nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in 2011. He was a 1995 inductee into the International Karate and Kickboxing Hall of Fame and is a Grandmaster instructor in 5 martial arts. He's also a real cowboy with a real horse, and he is a famous tracker of missing hikers and fugitives. The Bendels own the Strong Heart Ranch near Florence, Colorado, and the Bendels have been operating, you guys are probably all familiar, our listeners, they've been operating martial arts studios in Fremont County for over 30 years. With that, I'd like to introduce, I want to step back for a second. You know, those are their written bios. But these guys, Don has done so much stuff. You know, he is a real cowboy. He wore a cowboy hat and boots into the studio today. He's still out there doing stuff. Janet is a social psychologist. So you're going to hear some anecdotes from Don's life. And then Janet, the second part of the book is the part where, you know, it shows, hey, how can you be a real man in today's world when there's so many different pressures? So, Don, can you take it away? And glad to have you in the studio today.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
So let's start with Chapter 1.
I'll just start off with Chapter 1, A Test of Faith. I am a romantic and have fallen in love easily, sometimes falling in love with being in love. This obviously led to some errors. My first wife and I had 2 daughters and a son, and they were all born out of love, so that was no error. I've only had 2 really great loves in my life. One was my third wife, Shirley, who I was married to for 33 years, and I lost illness. The other is my wonderful wife right now, Janet. I've told friends that I feel so blessed by God that I have owned 2 once-in-a-lifetime horses. Not 1, but 2. I've had many horses, but only Hawk and Eagle could be considered those white buffalo type horses. Now I've come to the realization that God blessed me even more with 2 great loves in my life. Hawk was an Appaloosa, very muscular and a broom tail and short brushy mane, fearless, and would take me over mountain peaks that could make a bighorn sheep cry. He saved my life several times. Eagle was a national show horse, half Arabian and half American saddlebred. He had a number of gaits, was elegant, fancy, and prancy. He could take me all day in the mountains or desert and never get out of breath. He too saved my life on a number of occasions, but he was more appropriate as I got older and needed a smoother ride. I was married for 33 years to Shirley, a beautiful modern-day Annie Oakley. Totally appropriate for my life then. And now that I'm older, I'm married to Janet, a modern-day beautiful and elegant Grace Kelly. In 2007, I hooked up my friend, Denver Broncos Hall of Fame quarterback John Elway, with the Department of Veterans Affairs. Now John is president of football operations and general manager of the team. Back then, he agreed to become the national celebrity spokesperson for the VA's new Fit for Life program. The then Secretary of VA, James Nicholson, came to Denver and gave a speech at the Denver Medical Center, which was simulcast to VA facilities all over the world, telling about the new proposed VA hospital and introducing John as celebrity spokesman. Secretary Nicholson first introduced John, who spoke to the cameras in packed auditorium, and then the secretary shocked me by speaking about me throughout the speech and talked about me overcoming wounds, quadruple bypass surgery, illnesses, heavy smoking, alcoholism, and many health issues. He said that even though I was 60 years old then, I ate heart healthy and did 1,000 push-ups at a time daily, 1,000 crunches each day, and many other things my body let me do at that time. Then he honored John and me at a luncheon with a group of doctors and VA executives. Afterwards, life-size cutouts of John Elway and me together were displayed throughout the National Mall in Washington, D.C. That was nice, and I felt humbled being called the model for what a disabled veteran can do by eating right and exercising daily. Let's go to a commercial and come back.
Okay.
This is Right Time Radio. We will be back with more of this story by Don Bennell.
Zerby Automotive is celebrating 35 years in business in Fremont County.
Please join us on Friday, September 20th from 11 to 2 at 718 South 8th Street in Canyon City.
We will be serving a hot dog lunch with all the fixings. There will be a prize wheel to spin for some terrific prizes.
Follow Zerby Automotive's Facebook page for more ways to win before our Customer Appreciation Day.
So join us from 11 to 2 p.m.
The Fremont County Commissioners are seeking enthusiastic applicants to fill 2 vacancies on the Fremont County Airport Advisory Board. The board reviews regulations and provides guidance on management of the airport. The 2 positions are both for 3-year terms starting October 1st. The airport board meets quarterly on the first Tuesday of the month at 8 a.m. Letters of interest should be submitted no later than 4 p.m. Monday, September 30th to the County Commissioner's Office, 615 Macon Avenue in Canyon City.
An intervention brings help from the outside to someone who's not quite ready to seek it on their own. Dr. Michael Ziegler says an intervention also describes how God works in our lives. Hear Dr. Ziegler's message and a preview of the new podcast, Speaking of Jesus, this week on The Lutheran Hour.
The Lutheran Hour is brought to you by St. John's Lutheran Church in Canyon City. Listen Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. here on 1400 KRLN.
What are you going to do while you're here in Fremont County? There's so much to choose from. How about a brewery tour? Attend a play at our historic theaters and venues, bird watching along the Riverwalk, swimming in our community pools, try a classy restaurant or picnic in one of our mini parks, or take a dip in our hot springs. Go skydiving or for a helicopter ride. There's so much to do, you want to stay a while. This message brought to you by Stoner's Rock Block, supplying Fremont County quality landscaping materials since 2005.
KRLN weather, sunny, warm, and windy today. Southwest winds gusting 15 to 30 this afternoon. High today around 86. Clear and windy tonight with gusty west winds along near 50. Then sunny tomorrow, the high around 82. 52 was our low this morning after a high of 88 yesterday. Currently 71 degrees at the Weather Center.
Talk Radio 1400, KRLN.
Welcome back to Right Time Radio. Our guest today is Don Bendell and his wife Janet Bendell. They've written a book that has a fantastic title called Cowboy the F Up. And we're back with Don Bendell. Go ahead, Don.
However, just 3 years later, on February 2nd, 2010, I had a heart attack, which the doctor said was caused by a clot from one of my leg veins used for my quad bypass in 2000, breaking down and the tissue forming a clot and hitting a heart valve. Fortunately, my heart was not damaged. The VA said I had heart disease from excessive exposure to Agent Orange during the war in South Vietnam. I remained in the Colorado Springs Hospital a long time due to an allergy to a beta blocker, which gave me severe hives all over my body. The first week I was in the hospital, my wife Shirley visited and told me she had a routine physical. She was 63 at the time and had been swimming 100 laps at a time, 4 days a week, as well as lifting weights, doing Pilates, and teaching martial arts classes and training horses at our ranch. 2 days after the physical, Shirley came into my hospital room and I knew something was wrong. The lab showed her white blood count had skyrocketed and her doctor referred her to an oncologist. The Pueblo oncologist told her that she had chronic myelogenous leukemia with lymphoid blast crisis and could not expect to live for more than 2 months. That day was the second to her last appointment with that doctor, and she switched to a different doctor in Colorado Springs, James Young, who did not feel he was God and could declare how long she would live. She lived 4 more years until Valentine's Day 2014 and survived and conquered a cell mutation of CML leukemia that nobody ever recovered from. She also survived 10 separate cycles of chemotherapy and a bone marrow stem cell transplant. Shirley and I both always gave all the credit to God because a lot of prayer from many people, and as well as excellent doctors and very caring and knowledgeable nurses. During her fight against the deadly cancer, there were a number of times where she was rushed to a hospital with a near-death emergency, and more than one time doctors told me she would not survive the rest of that day. But on this particular day, there was clearly, even blindingly obvious, a major divine intervention by God. On one occasion, I was back home from the hospital writing and taking care of horses, peacocks, dogs, and cats. I got a call from Shirley, but I could not make out what she was saying. Making sure I had my cell phone and digital hearing aids turned up all the way, I went into the barn to get out of the wind, removed my left hearing aid, and held my right one up against the phone, straining to hear. Shirley's voice was so weak I could barely make out that she whispered, "Dr. Young wants to see you today before you see me." I knew something was horribly wrong, and I told her I'd be there in an hour. We lived over an hour away. Running into the house, I quickly got ready, jumped in my customized 1981 Corvette Stingray, and let it prove why I owned it. In an hour, I was in her oncologist office in a medical building attached to Colorado Springs Penrose Hospital. Dr. Young, a fine doctor nearing retirement, said, "Don, you and Shirley told me to always be totally honest with you and not hide anything." Concerned, I said, "Yes, what's wrong?" He said, "Shirley's taken a very bad turn for the worse. After you left yesterday afternoon, she developed a fever of 104 degrees and still has it. We have not been able to break it, and now she's so weak, I had to have the nurses remove her IDs because the chemo she is getting is so strong it alone will kill her. She's curled up in a fetal position on her bed and cannot move because her body's so weak. She cannot even talk." I said, "She's almost dead?" He nodded uncomfortably and said softly, "I knew you were coming back this afternoon, but I wanted you here earlier to be able to tell her goodbye. I've never offered my opinion on how long anybody can live, but with her faltering, I simply do not know how to do anything else. Well, I'm certain Shirley will be gone in just a few hours. I'm sorry." He handed me a box of tissues, and I went through the whole box and part of another, crying. Months and several years of stress and heartaches and near-death experiences poured out of my body in deep, racking sobs. I emptied the floodgates, and then I stopped crying and sucked it up. In many crises, many American men become zeros, but this crisis needed a hero. The time for crying is appropriate, but now that time was over, and it was a time for doing. Gathering myself, I stood and shook hands with Dr. Young. I said, "I'm sorry about that." He put up his hand and said, "Don't be silly. I can't believe how hard all this has been on you. And hey, I'm not God. You both told me how strongly you believe in prayer, and I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. Maybe if you have a special prayer, it can work. You know, I went to Harvard Medical, and all the years and all the education, there's nothing else I can do." I shook with him and assured him that we both appreciated all he had done, and were blessed that she had lived so long and through so many close calls. I told him that we respected him, and if she went home that day, nobody would fault him for it. Dr. Young's office building was connected to the indoor parking garage and was on the other side of Penrose St. Francis Hospital, a very large complex. Emotionally, I was numb, my head filled with lead from all the crying. Having had my nose broken 20 times over the years, surgery to remove bone from my sinus cavity that CAT scans showed to look like the Grand Canyon, I could not breathe through my nose. Feeling frustrated, dejected, heartbroken, and beaten down to the floor, I walked down many long hallways to get to the familiar 11th floor West Cancer Wing. While walking, I prayed fervently. This was too big for me, no matter how desperate. I did not beg while praying because God wants us to ask, not plead. On the way there, I was suddenly drawn into a small waiting room which had large windows showing nearby 14,000-foot plus Pikes Peak. I stared at the majestic nearby snow-capped peak, inspiration for Kathy Lee Bates' poem, which inspired the song America the Beautiful. Suddenly, from a treetop birch between the mountain and me, a mighty bird winged its way skyward and circled. It was a large bald eagle. Shirley and I, for years, had seen eagles from time to time as a sign from God. My adopted Lakota or Sioux name is Wanshi Wamble, which means one eagle, and my longtime horse and companion was named Eagle. I also collect eagle paintings and sculptures which fill my ranch house with not only fine art, but an aura of independence and strength. It reminded me of my favorite Bible verse, Isaiah 40:31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. I prayed and asked God to give me the words, the right words that would best hit Shirley right in the gut. I also prayed for a miracle healing, which I had been doing every day. Suddenly, in my inner being, in my soul, I simply knew to go to Shirley, and God would put the words in my mouth, in my heart, when I got there. Bear in mind, I had been a Green Beret, and two of our sons were Green Berets, and I mentioned that Shirley was Annie Oakley reincarnated. There were many adventures with her on horseback in the mountains of southern Colorado and on the giant Navajo reservation in the Four Corners area. For example, Shirley and I were looking for two fugitive cop killers in Cross Canyon on the Colorado-Utah border. We actually set up our tent and camped for several days in the cop killers' campsite, where they stayed along with their third partner, who committed suicide on an island in the San Juan River near Bluff, Utah, as law enforcement moved in. Shirley was making a documentary about me tracking fugitives and missing hikers. Spending one day crawling into numerous abandoned mines and Anasazi cliff dwellings, with a flashlight and a .45, I rode across a stream in Cross Canyon on my sure-footed horse Eagle with quicksand in the bottom of the watercourse. I turned to yell a warning, but it was too late. Shirley's Appaloosa, Migo, had already entered the quicksand and panicked. I yelled for Shirley to kick out of the stirrups, but she stubbornly remained in the saddle and disappeared with her horse under the now muddy water. The quicksand was so strong it literally sucked Shirley's spurs off both cowboy boots. She remained in the saddle the whole time, and all I saw was Shirley's one hand sticking straight up out of the water, protectively holding her high-definition video camera up out of the water until the horse regained his footing. She emerged, both of them totally drenched and completely covered with black mud. She was still holding the horse's reins in one hand and her dry camera in the other. She gasped for breath while I just shook my head and then started a fire to dry her clothes. Sometime later, the bodies of the two cop killers we sought were found in Cross Canyon. Both had been shot in the head. Their bodies were within a couple miles of where we camped in their campsite. On another occasion, with several people riding with us in the mountains, including our two youngest sons in grade school at the time, an angry 1,300-pound quarter horse flipped itself on its back with her in the saddle. Then it got up and stepped all over her. She was unconscious for a half hour, and when the EMT tried to slip oxygen into her nose while she lay on a hospital gurney, Shirley, still out of it, reached up over her head and put the man in 2 wrist locks with him screaming in pain. I yelled for her to let him go, and he fell on the ground, shaking his arms in misery, while onlookers chuckled. As I gave her first aid for a half hour before the ambulance arrived, she finally came to, but apparently hallucinating, and with eyes still closed, moaned, "Oh God, Don, please get her off of me. She broke my back and my neck. I can't move. Get her off of me, Don." Then she slipped back into blackness. She spent 3 days in the ICU. The next day, she had 3 horseshoe-shaped bruises on her spine and 1 on the side of her neck. Many still believe there was a divine intervention that day. She had no broken bones, but dealt with concussion issues for a long time, yet was riding horses again within a month. Nobody could believe her toughness and how quickly she recovered. The large, mean mare had tried to kill her. Besides her legendary cowgirl adventures in the martial arts, Shirley was a veritable cyclone of kicks and punches in tournament fighting competition. Despite being only 5'2" and built like an Olympic gymnast, she not only won first place in every match she ever fought in, but amazingly never had a single point scored against her. A former victim of both gang rape and acquaintance rape, Shirley became a passionate leading authority on sexual assault prevention and taught untold numbers of women and girls how to be empowered and fight against and defeat rapists and domestic abusers. She was only the 3rd woman in history, and we were the first and only couple in history to both be inducted into the International Karate and Kickboxing Hall of Fame. Shirley and I had both been recovering alcoholics for decades and were both very devout Christians. Notwithstanding our spirituality, as you can imagine, we both spoke in the rough manner of many recovering alcoholics and former military types, especially spec ops. This was good, though, because we ministered to people who the Pat Boones and Pat Robertsons of the world could not reach or even get close to. By the time I reached Shirley's room, I honestly felt God had touched my heart. I simply felt a quiet confidence. Seeing her was a shock. The upper half of her bed was inclined to 45 degrees, and she lay on her side, curled up in a fetal position. This was a 65-year-old woman with 8-pack abs and the physique of a 30-year-old bodybuilder. She looked frail, pale, and withered. She had already been through 7 or 8 cycles of chemo, and it seemed this long-time high fever had really taken its toll. I did notice that her hair looked soaking wet and wondered if her fever had broken. A nurse was doing little tasks around her bed, and I waited for her to leave. Shirley's eyes were still closed. The nurse left, and I slid a chair over right next to the bed and sat down. Let me collect my thoughts.
This is Right Time Radio. We're going to break for a commercial, and we'll be back with a little bit more of this story, and then we're going to talk to Janet, and we're going to hear her comments.
Grief. It's defined as a multifaceted response to loss, particularly the loss of someone or something that has died. Grief can be overwhelming, but you don't have to struggle alone. There are healthy ways to cope and to learn to heal. Fremont Regional Hospice offers grief support services that are free and open to the community. To find out more about our grief support, come by 1439 Main Street in Canyon City or call 275-4315. Fremont Regional Hospice is proud to be your hometown hospice.
Italian food is the best food in the world. Right here in Florence, you'll find it. Made from the finest ingredients, pizzas, pastas, calzones, salads, Colorado beers and wines. With their special 4-cheese blend, local Skenga meats, and the freshest vegetables, it all combines to give you the most satisfying Italian cuisine experience ever. Come in at 132 West Main Street in Florence to taste for yourself. It's an Italian treat for the entire family. Call ahead for quicker service, 784-7888. That's Papa's Restaurant.
And we're back with Right Time Radio. Our guest Don Bendel is going to finish this the story, and then we're going to talk to Janet.
I gave her a soft kiss and whispered her name. She did not stir. I said her name louder, and she opened her eyes for just a flicker, and they closed again. I said in a soft but firm voice, "Shirley, I have something very, very important to tell you, and need you to keep your eyes open staring at me so I know I have your full attention." She opened her eyes wide. Shirley told me later she was so weak she didn't want to open her eyes when I came in because she just wanted to sleep and slip away. She said that it frightened her when I said I had something very important to tell her because she had told me that Dr. Young wanted me to come in earlier to speak with him. She was certain he had told me to tell her goodbye because she was dying that day. I said, "Shirley, if you are hearing me very clearly, blink your eyes." She blinked her eyes. I said, "I want to ask you to do something for me that I know you do not want to do at all. But I want you to trust me that it's what is best for both you and me. Will you give me your word you'll do what I ask?" Very weakly, she said, "Yes." I said, "Do you promise?" "Yes," she said. "Good," I replied. "I want you to cowboy the F up and get your diseased ass up out of this bed." Shirley told me later that my words shocked her because I never bossed her around, except when I wore the hat of Grandmaster Bendel, her martial arts instructor of over 3 decades. Her instructor had just given her a command and she wanted to comply. She immediately said, "Okay," and set her jaw. With both arms shaking, she put both palms against her bed, and using every ounce of strength she could summon, she pushed herself into a sitting position and smiled at me. Someone had brought her lunch, and I picked up a handful of pasta and said, "Good for you. Do you want some pasta?" Showing on her face that she was surprising herself with her response, she said, "Yes." I started to move the fork towards her mouth, but she grabbed my hand, saying, "No, I'll feed myself." I watched with admiration and awe as she feebly at first fed herself, but seemed to gain strength as she ate. By the time she finished her meal, she seemed to be almost her old self again. Shirley spoke as if we had not seen each other in weeks. Another amazing thing happened. Her normally husky, powerful voice had been gone for days too. However, now she had her familiar voice back to full volume and deep pitch. Then she shocked me again as she pursed the nurse button on her bedside control. A voice came on. "Yes, Shirley?" She said, "I'd like to take a shower, please." The nurse said, "Okay, I'll be right there to give you one." Shirley replied, "No, I just want you to wrap my PICC line with plastic. I'll give myself a shower." Shirley walked into the bathroom slowly and carefully, but refusing help. She emerged a few minutes later, smiling and wrapped in towels. She put on a brand new pair of flannel pajamas given to her by a friend named Amanda. Next, she sat on the bed looking into the mirror on her bedside stand and spent a long time putting on lipstick and other makeup while she chatted with me like a happy teenager at a slumber party. There was a very cute, short, and really professional black nurse supervisor named Gail, who Shirley and I both liked. She was now in the hallway with her back to the open door speaking to some younger nurses. All the nurses and assistants that day were in the sullen mood because all were told Shirley was going to die. Shirley walked over to the doorway and said, "Gail." Gail turned around and Shirley threw her arms up in the air and said, "Let's boogie, girl." At the same time, Shirley wiggled her hips rhythmically from side to side. Laughing, Gail threw her arms up in the air and yelled, "Oh my God, you're back from the dead." She ran across the hall and the two women threw their arms around each other, laughing and hugging. Dr. Young reasoned later that taking Shirley off chemotherapy enabled the fever to break because she was allergic to one of the meds in her chemo cocktail they were giving her. The high fever they could not break was a drug fever, just like I had in 1969 in Tokyo and Vietnam, which almost killed me. Stopping the IV was why her fever broke, apparently while I was on my way to the doctor's office. He said forcing her to eat and get protein into her system was the best thing we could have done. Of course, that was rational conclusion, but we knew it was all due primarily to prayer. Shirley lived almost 2 more years. Besides losing Shirley, I lost 2 of my 13 grandchildren and a little Montagnard girl in Vietnam named Flora. I had gotten the paperwork on to adopt, as well as losing my older brother and my parents. I've been shot twice, stabbed, gassed, blown up, shot down in a helicopter, dropped at night into trees and high winds, had horse wrecks, fell 300 feet down a cliff, bit by black widow spiders on 2 separate occasions, stung by a scorpion, had car crashes, many broken bones, including breaking my back in 4 separate places, and many diseases. All this besides fighting in combat in a number of battles. God has protected me numerous times, on many occasions, and pulled me back from death's door quite often. Having success in life does not make anybody immune from heartaches, illnesses, hard times, and misfortune. We are all the same, all children under God. Every single day of my life, I pray for God's will to be done. When I take over, I usually screw things up. My walk with Jesus and surrendering my life to God's will is what makes me a man more than anything else, in my opinion.
That's great. Okay, so the way this book works is the first, how many chapters?
13.
First 13 chapters are these amazing stories that Don wrote. And then the last third, his wife Janet is using her knowledge as the social psychologist and is analyzing his stories and is sharing with us what makes the right kind of man, basically. So now we're going to go to Janet, and she's going to talk about her comments on his stories. Now, it's not this specific story. It's like a combination of all the 13 stories. But take it away, Janet.
So, what is a cowboy? The cowboy is any man who wants to be a real man. He isn't trying to be perfect. He's just doing what he can do to become a better man. The John Wayne character of a real man is an ideal. He is a hero. It's something to strive to be. Every man wants to be his authentic self and his very best self. That's what the cowboy, as we define him, endeavors to accomplish. He believes in himself, and he attempts to attain his dreams. He knows he's a work in progress, so he takes his life as it comes, with all of its stressors, challenges, and adversity, and uses these experiences to become the man he has imagined himself to be. He attempts to realize his human potential. He is a self-actualizer. Don is a role model because he is a cowboy. He is a modern-day John Wayne. His story represents how one man's life is a process of change, development, growth, and maturation. He has made choices based upon expansion rather than apprehension. He makes healthy selections because that is what he truly prefers. He is self-determining because he listens to his own voice. He follows his heart. He takes conscious actions. Don is a fully functioning man. He is in touch with his innermost values, beliefs, and feelings. He trusts his urges and instincts. He's balanced, resilient, and innovative. He is a whole person, individuated, integrated, and self-actualizing. He has created a life that has his original signature. Don is an example of a cowboy, but anyone can be a cowboy. In fact, everyone has the raw material for being a cowboy because you are human and you are alive. You can be a cowboy regardless of sex, race, color, religion, national origin, age, gender orientation, disability, or anything else. You don't have to ride a horse or work on a ranch wrangling cattle. Anyone can develop the traits of a cowboy and utilize them to improve their life anywhere, anytime. However, this book was written to intentionally reach out to men to counterpoise a deleterious social movement. Toxic masculinity. There is currently an identity and gender cataclysm underway in our society. Toxic masculinity classifies traditional masculine roles and qualities as dysfunctional to the male and harmful to society. Men have been labeled as violent, unemotional, sexually compulsive oppressors, and intimidators. Men are categorized as angry, cold, hard, detached, tough, aggressive, competitive, dominating, independent, greedy status seekers. Men are accused of not only benefiting from patriarchy, but also subordinating women and anyone else who does not adhere to traditional goals. Basically, men are being shamed for not being more like women. Some people would like to reduce men's power and transform them into insecure, soft, confused creatures. This is a very harmful socialization trend. Change agents talk about celebrating diversity, but traditional masculinity is excluded. Personally, as a heterosexual woman, I want my man to be masculine in a traditional sense. When my husband takes charge, I can relax. When it's necessary, my husband wants to take the leadership role in a specific situation. Since he is comfortable and effective at it, I agree that he can do what works for him, and it works for me. When my mate acts manly, I am actually liberated to be more feminine. I don't have to be hypervigilant when my husband is powerful in situations that require it. Our feminine and masculine personas create equilibrium in our relationship. Equal does not mean identical. Most women actually appreciate the diversification between men and women. I certainly do. Extreme masculine or feminine traits are unattractive and unhealthy, whether men or women are expressing them. However, not all men manifest these dysfunctional and toxic masculine traits, nor do all women manifest dysfunctional and toxic feminine traits. There's some men who exhibit extreme feminine traits and some women who have a proclivity to be extremely masculine. Excessive masculinity or excessive femininity can be like drinking too much whiskey or eating too much cake. In the end, it makes you sick.
Well written and well spoken, Janet. We'll be right back with more Right Time Radio, and we're going to talk to the authors after these words.
I'm Conservative State House Leader Patrick Neville with a message paid for by Yes on Proposition DD, a win for Colorado's water. With populations booming, the West is growing fast, and competition for water from here to California is fierce. Colorado needs to get on the offense and do more to protect our water. Now, we have a chance to do just that. This November, you'll have a chance to vote for Proposition DD, which allows mountain casinos to offer sports betting. Proposition DD is a $29 million tax. Only casinos pay the tax to fund the Colorado Water Plant. Proposition DD will provide funding necessary to protect Colorado's water and fund critical water investments. It's a win for agriculture, it's a win for the environment, and it's a win for all Coloradans. Join the Farm Bureau, the Colorado Cattlemen's Association, Colorado River Water Conservation District, and leading fiscal conservatives. Vote yes on Proposition DD.
Support, compassion, and understanding. That's what makes up the team at Fremont Regional Hospice. If you or someone you know is facing a life-limiting illness and you're unsure about what to do, then call the specialists at Fremont Regional Hospice to see how we can help. Call 275-4315 or come by 1439 Main Street in Canyon City. Fremont Regional Hospice is proud to serve Fremont County and surrounding areas and is proud to be your hometown hospice.
Dear Vet Ticks, it was nice to spend the night with my daughter and other veterans. It's so humbling to attend an event when you feel appreciated.
I had a wonderful time with my family. Thank you for the memories, VetTix.
Dear VetTix, thank you for a great experience and for your support of the military and veterans.
Thank you so much, VetTix. Our family has gone through a lot the last few years, and this gave us a nice break.
Every empty seat at a concert, game, or special event is a missed opportunity to say thank you to a veteran or a service member. By giving your extra tickets to VetTix, you'll help America's heroes reduce stress, strengthen family bonds, and create a truly happy memory that will last a lifetime. So when you really want to say thank you for your service, give the experience, give the memory. VetTix. Give something to those who gave. For more information on how you can make a difference, go to vettix.org.
KRLN weather, sunny, warm, and windy today. Southwest winds gusting 15 to 30 this afternoon. A high today around 86. Clear and windy tonight with some gusty west winds, although near 50. Then sunny and cooler tomorrow, the high around 82. 88 was our high yesterday with a low this morning of 52. 77, the current reading at the Weather Center.
Talk Radio 1400, KRLN.
We're back with Right Time Radio. I'm Tom Bruno. I'd like to put a shout out to Fremont Regional Hospice, our sponsor for this show. They've always supported us since the very beginning, and This is our 6-month anniversary.
It is.
So thank you.
Tom.
Thank you to Lynn Donovan, and I. 6 months putting this show on, and thank you, Fremont Regional Hospice, for that great sponsorship. We're back with Don and Janet Bendel, who have written this amazing, bold, and unique book called Cowboy the F Up, and How to Be a Real Man. There's a few questions. Did we have a caller, or did that drop off?
They were calling during the break, but they're welcome to call back now because the phone lines are open, and I will answer it.
All right, great. Hey, I do want, Don, if you'd, I think a good way to get into the interview portion of this program is to read the preface for this unique book.
Okay, Tom. In this book, we use the word cowboy. By that term, we mean a real man, not a guy who goes to redneck bars on weekends, drinks beer and gets in fights, wears dirty jeans, a greasy Caterpillar baseball hat, and has a can of Skull in his hip pocket. When we were young children, our heroes were cowboys on TV and in film. And that is the type of man we refer to when we use the term cowboy herein.
Very good. So, Janet, this book's kind of written to men, but I can see where women would really enjoy reading this to get an idea of what they're looking for in a man. So I love that. And as a romance writer, I'm kind of thinking of reading it to help build up my men and my romances. So I've got these cowboys, you know. You used the term toxic masculinity, and you also talked about these 5 different types of men. I think those two kind of tie together. Could you talk to us about that?
Yes, we sure do. I identified 5 stereotypes or prototypes of men, and the first one, of course, being the cowboy, the self-actualizing man, the guy who's a real man.
Right.
He really instills admiration and respect from everybody. He's got certain virtues like dignity. He gives respect. He's a very fair person. He lives by a code of honor and integrity. And everybody loves a cowboy. And the cowboy gets the girl.
Yes.
But some people, and I got a cowboy. But then there's the dude who's really a regular, ordinary guy. And he's got high moral fiber, and he's competent, he has confidence, he functions very well in society. But honestly, he could do better, okay? And sometimes when he ought to stand up and do his best, he doesn't. So he's our regular guy. He's Mr. Nice Guy. Then we have the outlaw, and you know, women love bad boys.
Yes.
They really do. But why? Because they're exciting and they do have courage. They have a boldness about them that's very exhilarating.
Yeah.
But the cowboy honestly feels that he is living against society. I'm sorry. The outlaw feels that he's living against society, and that everything is a struggle. And so honestly, but the outlaw can turn into a cowboy. If he has a moral compass, he can become a cowboy. And in this book, we tell people how anybody can become a cowboy.
Nice.
Then we also have the dandy, which honestly is a sissy, henpecked. He's the guy who really has never lived up to his potential.
Okay.
And sometimes he's lazy or a nonconformist, and he feels entitled, and he's probably got a dependency disorder. If you're depending on a woman to make all the income, bring home the bacon, and provide everything for you, you are a dandy. And then we have the tenderfoot, and the tenderfoot is the novice, the recruit, the new person, the private in the army. He's just learning. We don't know where he's going to go, but if he's influenced correctly, has the right kind of role models, he can realize his potential too.
Nice. So that's your 5 types of men.
Yes.
Okay. So from like identifying that as who you are or where you are, then that gives you direction for where to go to get to be the cowboy, which is the
absolutely
real man.
The real man, the cowboy, is honestly a self-actualizer. It's a person who listens to his own heart, who follows his own instincts, and really designs a life that is both good and provides good. Okay, so it's a person who's using their potential to be the best they can be. And I have an old saying that before you can be all you can be, you have to be yourself. So it's very, very important for people to find their own path, whatever that is. It could be you want to be a saxophone player, or you want to be a music teacher, or own your own business and be a contractor. Whatever it is that is in your heart. Follow your own heart, and that's the way that you can realize your potential. But you also have to practice virtues like integrity and courage and trustworthiness. You have to show the character that goes along with the competence.
Nice. Okay. I like the way that's defined. You put a lot of thought into that.
She is a social
Probably
psychologist.
some studies too. Where can we get this book?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Readers can, or listeners can order the book on Amazon Kindle or Amazon.com. It's also on Amazon Unlimited if you're a member of Unlimited and you read the book for free.
Nice.
And they charge, I think, by page, or no, you pay a fee.
Monthly fee.
They give us royalties by page, how many pages you read.
That's right.
But the book is in Kindle. It's $6.99. And then you can buy the large paperback. And the book's 73,000 words. It's a good-sized book, and it's $16.99
for the paperback.
Yeah.
All right, good deal.
Awesome. And this was just a recently published book. When did it actually go on the market?
Last weekend on our second wedding anniversary.
Second wedding. Congratulations, you guys.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your anniversary.
Oh,
our 6 months.
6 month anniversary. 6 month on the air.
That's great.
Well, now, this is a unique book that I think a lot of people are going to get a lot out of. There's going to be some people that take offense to it, and that's a good thing. Make people think. Whenever there's controversy, there's...
Controversy creates cash.
That's right. But it's still unusual. I mean, I can kind of see where it developed from the unique combination of your individual backgrounds. But what prompted you to write the book?
Well, when I met Don 2.5 years ago, he had all these wonderful stories. And so as a social psychologist, I was listening not just only as a woman getting to know him, but also as a social psychologist. And I thought, gosh, I'd love it if you would write down these stories.
Yeah.
And then I realized that what I actually could do is analyze the components of those stories that make people attracted to a man like this. And like I say, the cowboy gets the girl. A guy who is motivated, achievement-oriented, and practices things like respect and fairness and is dignified. And is bold. Women love that. Sometimes they mistake the outlaw for the cowboy, but women love a cowboy. And so, guys, if you feel as if you haven't been getting the girls and you want to,
it's a go for
this
it.
book has a lot of important information because you can develop it. You can realize your potential and be your best self.
It is definitely a go for it attitude. And Don, why don't you?
But yeah, that if I can chime in just for give me 30 seconds.
Greg is our producer and the DJ here.
Yeah, I first was introduced to Don when I moved here and came to the radio station in the late '90s, I think it was. And the one thing he made a great impression on me, just being from out of state or whatever, when the man and his son were lost up on Tanner Peak.
Troy Tilley.
Yeah, and nobody could find him. Nobody could find him. We had search and rescue. Everybody, and there's one man sitting across from me that got the job done. So he in my mind was totally impression. It made a great impression and an inspiration because all the anguish and everything the whole community was going through, and especially the family. You put some finality to it. So you were the
well. Thank you, Jolene Tilley, the widow of Troy Tilley, and the mother of Drew Naylor, the little boy that perished, and his best friend Joseph Lippincott perished.
Right.
And I had become friends with them, and so had my late wife Shirley. And after the boys were found, they had died of hypothermia, sitting side by side up on Tanner Peak.
It was gruesome.
I had to attend the funeral of one boy one day, and the other boy the next day. And Joseph Lippincott's father, Mark Lippincott, came up to me and he said, Don, they're gossiping about Troy, saying he molested the boys and took them on the mountain. And he said, you've heard all the rumors going around Fremont County. And he said, Troy was my best friend. I'm really mad. He got my son killed. But I know Troy. He wouldn't have done anything to harm my son. Give me your word you'll find him. And then Jolene asked me the same thing and kissed me on the cheek and thanked me. And I said, you've got my word, I'll find your husband. Yeah. And that's why I went, man's only as good as his word.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to bring that up, but it fit right in the true cowboy of.
I wrote about it in here.
Okay, it's in the book. Yeah. All right. Cool. Very cool. Well,
all right. Well,
we got 30 seconds.
Had a great day here at Right Time Radio. Remember, if you want to submit something to the show, email us at righttimeradio@gmail.com.
And thanks, Don and Janet, for being on our show. And wish you the best with this. Everybody go out on Amazon and buy that book, Cowboy the F Up.
Thank you.